Panashidele,
Orashidaraida.
be
Payable. Shit. Dolo domara chibe ra no para chibe ge darwa dong damji chembe wartu ju para chiba damji je so chibe ma namka dong nyambe simjen damji de den dongara dong chi nyordu lana mi yang da para be chang jo rinpo shi do para cha.
All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment.
Chi tu sang ma ji ji par tu lu nga yi song ge wa la kor ma shi par tu lu nga yi song ge wa la kor tu te ren ne song de ni ma sang ta ye zam ji par tu lu nga yi song ge wa la kor.
For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue.
Yeah, okay. Then 당가서 가서 딘조 되게 말로나.
na 독성은서
네, 그래 있습니다.
이 뱀배 소소라 뱀배 추추 통마선 골라
랑지 치베 초주스 랑 진짜
나 텔라팅아 따겐
랑지 치베 초주스 세로테레와 코도와
나레 흘라서
근데 매초 반에 담배사 주치반에 랑지 치바니 스탄보세 다 매초 세나 제가 소 지天그제 차동 모섬 다제 라 메라제 유로와 제 매초 라고라 양은 메제 가히메 야고서서는 메라제 계산님 보요 랑제 在跟我说，没跟我说在用的，这点呢，这样，这做相当在用个的。咱们在其他业务面呢，咱们先上面这个嘛了。们这话听出去呢，在恰当说的呢，恰当帮的是，在恰当帮的，特别他就是呢，他这个可是说给项目做卡了，然后后呢，在他恰当是帮来做让项目做对特别。在项目对呢，在项目后呢，在项目在系列的用个车的啦，所以偏给的，在起码了偏给的我恰当可能说嘛送的，他就可能其他的让切换应用多。对我们就可能说我的是让去打了恰当推进，让去打完这个恰的推进，先去打完了，抽是看到是抽给多快捷。之前多恰控制那不是的，我提前多恰了说控制都是怕谁呢？那就说那要出，那把它九百起，那这要把抽出来的是，在恰当出来的那种苦吧，他们没人苦吧强的是。在天对天怎么说呀？当在恰当嘛穷当，在特别他就在让先从对他先不看人家去头他，在这就去过的种是啥的。在强你这头要空白当呀，给我这边没给帮呀，强你这头空白当呀。在这说其他的特别他就强你这强就甚至也当中呢。在那在特别他就是那是啥的。
Well, we continue with the 10 ways to do yourself a favor. And the first one is you do yourself a favor by giving up the attachments and aversions of worldly life and practicing the pure Dharma. So the first way of being kind to yourself, doing yourself a favor, is giving up what is called here the worldly life. And so what is referred to here with the worldly life, essentially it means whatever triggers our attachment and aversion. For example, when someone is nice to you, then you feel good about it. But if someone is not nice to you, then you dislike that. And then because of that, you become ambitious and develop more thoughts of attachment and anger. And especially when others are not treating you well, then you often end up in conflicts with them. So that is the worldly ways, the worldly life. And instead of that, so how do we do ourselves a favor is by turning toward, by practicing the pure Dharma, which means to turn your mind inward. And that will benefit you in this life and also in the next life. It is said in the Madhyamakavatara that attachment to one's own views and also being disturbed by others' views, these are only conceptual thoughts. And a wise person completely clears these biased thoughts of attachment and aversion away. And as a result of that, they will quickly reach liberation. And so it's because of these thoughts of attachment and aversion that ignorance, that we have been wandering in samsara since beginningless time endlessly. And so to bring an end to that, we must turn toward practicing the Dharma. And so that essentially means to cultivate and to develop our mind of love and compassion. So that's what we call here the practicing the pure Dharma.
근데 다 니바들이 침탑 년로 방에 지유 참바 된바는 랑지장 치와 인세와 다 침탑 방선다 저와 안에다 저거 치면서 상황도 있을까 하고로 봐. 어때 침탑 방선에 어때 년초 방에 스타 년로서 디스 차다 차화중 시고래 송교사 다 차방년의 자년소 차방중 당고 그래서 지참 바랑지장 치와 인세 차당기 메게 이제스 다 차당기 메게 될 때는 어디는 자바 다 침탑 라서 바당 년로 되는 시다 뭐보전 중에 틀때는 제 차방 모서 뭐보전 중에 년이 나 틀때는 년이 좀 마가래 람 좀 첨부 뭐 가게 요나 년이 된 마가 좀 틀때는 한선 소소 마데 뭐보제 용거로 봐 어제 루트 차방 뭐보지 용거래 스테 차방 고갑 저 차방티 고갑 다서 방에 대 집이 참바데 집이 참바전 제다 양 참바제 터베 람 동네 정원데 양 타베 람 동네 정원甚至呢어제 다공 봐 넘버 타바냐네 진행 정원데这집이 양 타바데 된 거래스 어제 좀 교사래 어다 되면 제 차방 공항 교통这个말에서 대체 하자 다른 이런 시간이 좀 교사래
Number 2, you do yourself a favor by leaving behind married life, family, and friends, and following a holy being. And so to abandon, abandoning the households and relatives and friends, and just becoming like a renunciate, like becoming a monk and ordaining and so forth. That is, of course, a little bit difficult, but at least we should try to lessen, reduce our attachment to them, because of this close kind of dependence on them. And these relations are all driven by attachment and aversion. So we may be close to some, we may find the comfort of being close to some, but then when we have that, then on the other side, there's always going to be someone else with whom we are in conflict and where we feel aversion. And so therefore, so these kind of connections then become endless. And so therefore, to do yourself a favor means to rely on a holy being, which is someone who shows you the correct path, the correct view. So a holy being is someone who perfectly practices the correct view, meditation, and conduct. So whose mind is pure and whose conduct is flawless.
真的，他总把这帮对自己切话当的，做上工作起班的，让这让切话，但对自己切话是，但上个星期他那个，甚至上个星期他在，对自己说的，他在上个星期有了，就当然说，他上个星期他那那个毛不有了，在别叫装这样，上个星期毛不有了，对切话的，在他上个星期毛不就有那个，别讲了，像那个说他，但你妈的落来毛不得有了，落来大家成这些那在用当。别晓得，但你妈的就是可惜在后头，那就是这一层一层嘛，用当地做啥子头发上班的工班的，其实那个也不来是对小娃当的，他头发现在做年样哇，在旁边这边的中多，头皮搞是弄差不多弄卡不得不马上过来是，那就卡不头皮搞是弄卡不得不马上过来是，头皮搞可是弄卡不漂亮，提上去了那这个嘛，卡不漂亮，这个嘛哇，头皮搞了。300搞了弄差不多的马上过来，300的弄差不多是呢，这个弄了样多的那样肥的那的去了那马上嘛通着个哇，那头皮搞了那话嘛年话起的，开始是呢，弄卡不平了，300搞了他一的嘛呀话，今天弄他别的在拉网了，这是可能嘛，就从那都弄差不多的不来是。真的光别搞是牛毛汤这话是牛毛汤这马上过来是光别倒是什么那头这的马上那别在他都什么那头是谁图片的嘛然后但是光家的他在地当牛毛桥当马上头这些送的什么头这的他那抢着过来是这一对在马上过来是我现在这咱对这桥吧都牛当土生过从头也这地当说这其中那真的现在当起嘛同 drop 特别好偏开的是天对真的但对这些话这种他做挺长他从忙修的差价这种的那这在中这个呢上去看这言语上的真的那这块嘛这做这是用当这里提纲在提做上去做开些说那在现在的起码的上面上不当呢对做上工作给出去他们在那让这种偏开的是切开的是让这种切吧的是
Number 3, you do yourself a favor by giving up distracted activities and engaging in hearing, contemplating, and meditating. So giving up distracted activities, so that essentially means that the business or it's a busy activities of doing all kinds of things all day long. And what's especially prevalent in the nowadays, the way we keep ourselves very busy nowadays is by checking the internet, being on our computers and phones all day long, spending many hours in distraction. So if we can reduce that at least by an hour or 2 each day, then that time can be actually used for practice, for reflection, and for meditation. Gampopa had taught that this is how we should listen, reflect, and meditate on the Dharma. When listening to the Dharma, he said, you should not be like an upside down bowl. So if the bowl is turned upside down, then even if you try to pour in some water, nothing goes in because it's upside down, it's closed off. So meaning that if you are elsewhere, if you're not receptive to the teachings, if you're distracted, then the teachings cannot enter you. And then he said, when reflecting, don't be like a bowl with a hole in it, a leaking bowl. So that means that you may be listening to the teachings, but you don't retain them. You hear them, but you don't actually keep them in your mind. And that is similar to being a leaky bowl. So even though you are able to pour in some water, but it leaks through the hole. And then he said, when meditating, and don't be like a poison or a dirty bowl. So if you're listening, even though you may be, or you're meditating, even though you're sitting, practicing meditating, but if at the same time you are full of afflictive emotions like attachment and anger while you're practicing, then the practice becomes tainted, which is similar to pouring water into a dirty bowl. So then the pure content also becomes defiled. And so,
someone not told it big. No children, someone so don't not told it in other some of the sun here. What's a bit shasson?
So if there's poison in the bowl and you pour in food into the bowl, then the food itself becomes poisonous and so inedible. And so now, so the instruction to do yourself a favor is that reduce all this busyness, because this is what will actually benefit you in this life and in future lives. And that means for us nowadays, since most of our business really comes from the internet, just watching and scrolling and just looking at all these things in the internet, it's very important to be disciplined with your time and to just spend less time on that and decrease that time at least by an hour or two, by a few hours every day, and then use that time for practice, for reflection, for hearing, listen, for hearing, reflection, and meditation. And so this is what will actually benefit you in a future life. So when you do yourself a favor, when you're kind toward yourself, and you're essentially thinking about like beyond what you want to do now, but you're thinking about future lives.
Oh, then dan do yong chwa ji ne qiang mi zou tuo ba den ran ji zhang qi ba yin si dan do yong chwa ji sen do yong sen na dan do bei yong de nga la so so zha che zhu ri ya lo ra dan mai so yin zi ba la cha dan men zi hang dang zhou bei men zi ba la dang de na wei zha nian ba la cha men nian ba la dang de na che xian ba la cha men dan man zi ba de che me yan ba de la ya bo ge ge wo yo ma ba ba de na yi ke lu ke ge la so ba da so le我是说他们在有人说
都办吃车马上哎，他对我把的吃车马上哎，我看这个，
气喘哎，
也吃车啥的，
啊嘞，我这里的公他，因为我是床边在这边，
对的，东巴的，
对，他气说床边这些帮的几乎人把都把那让这张气吧，一种的吧，我他床把现在他床边拿着吧，床把现在要怎么忙不的，我说他床把那个吧。听到他在让这有的，他这那他也出忙不在有的，他这样的，我在桥上忙不节目搞的是，我在这些是帮的，他几个都安排都过来是，他几个安排是出都过来是，他上都过来，然后让这样切过来是的，他就系统的让这样切过来是，我在这当呢，他们那里边从马瑞克们那里边从了的，日出那边那叫了，叫他们他们去给我意思，日出那边那叫了。他叫他们去给完你，种他桥上去才是他有马哇呀，我在哪里他都过来种口子的，他这当子应该做充沛那地的，他这点的这他弄的阿美国人那是别想的，你是哪个马的？我把这种这是他有马哇用，他说后面那冲把都是他妈在一头一块的是，他第六给他忙些事，
回来看得到。
冲把他妈在一头圈几块的是，他这点桥上没说忙不用给的话，你知道钱不给了。
哦，
冲把他们这边进步有的话，这点恰当我所用这个话，俺们这个呢冲把冲了配件我些个嘛，我不说，最近的这场那这些的话，啊，没得。
对。
我他挺准的，是的呢，我这边当我说后来那冲把长嘛的，差不多几头几关的，我其他地头个我说冲线都是不行呐，在冲把用上嘛几头几关的，其他这个没在个眼前上面的话，今日去啊这，挺有去到的下这样的啊，恰当嘛说这，按这个角度恰当嘛不在用个话，但我买些那的家恰当其他家接近嘛话，我这对，他一个安排的出头呀，让这张七八的，咱安排的出差不多的。他们把差不多嘛，他们那在历史上讲说，看那个在历史做线做喜欢的那台机，在桥上是说往其他小的嘛送来， 다 전주 대시도 토나苹果 토레스
And number 4, you do yourself a favor by abandoning village people and neighbors and living alone in secluded place. So here that refers these village people and neighbors and so on. So that refers just to one's surroundings, one's community, essentially, those who surround you. Like if you live in a village, then there's a lot of people around you, like neighbors and so on. And so that's maybe a little bit different here than it is in Tibet. But so when excuse me, but when you're in Tibet, for example, then no, you really know everyone in that village. But here it may be a bit different. But what this verse is talking about is this kind of community that is kind of like tight knit, and because of this closeness of people. And even though you may have good relationships, supportive relationships, they also stir your attachment and your anger all the time. That is why this verse says, when you leave that behind and you stay alone in a quiet and solitary place, and there's also no one to provoke such afflicted thoughts, and the mind becomes peaceful. And therefore, remaining in solitude is to show a great kindness to yourself. Marpa told Milarepa, when staying in a mountain retreat in isolation, then whatever you do naturally becomes virtuous, naturally becomes the Dharma. And so for example, like as you mentioned, in Tibet, it's a bit different than in America. Maybe it's less of even an issue in America, because in America, the way people live in towns and cities is not that connected to each other. So most often, actually, in America, people don't even know their own neighbors. But in that way, also maybe you have less conflict and less attachment and aversion. In Tibet, in all these villages, they never really leave those villages, so everybody knows everyone. And of course, there's also the benefit of mutual support. People live very closely connected, but then because of that, also many thoughts of attachment and anger can arise. And so for that, therefore, it's better. In such a case, it's better to stay in a solitary place, like in a mountain retreat. But even if you can't go into a solitary retreat, at least try to live in such a way to create more peace, more calm in your mind, and less attachment and anger. And if you do that, then you're doing yourself a favor.
他特地推个昂的生产小马来，但是充备吃完这多的，充备这些菜这多，充备这特地推下的这三马的什么东西上面的哇，看这三马的上，特地推看没什么卡巴达都过的哇，这卡巴达都过的那么是做人之外，其他没想到过个，那么就你嘛最后的这3万的6年去这所谓的，他妈都是3万这所这。在高度下去的不是说，他婆婆都说卡巴的钱吧，他果然说给我给，这里给家拉不着嘛，你再帮我就我头，这就想到，我真的我平常忙卡巴达都过的崇拜呢，这个其他嘛，对，那没那这，第是，俺嘛那现在吧没把抢着的，你看到啊，这样子也不是他们的话，这现在他们别抢着，他们你的，他们开始咱娘们地动呢。真的，没开始卡巴的把这点，那我们说这主要去那个嘛吧，这那地的几块地的，那真的，俺这张真的用多挺高。
So this is actually nowadays it's actually really a little bit different. And it's because we have this technology of the internet and the phones. And even if you actually, also in Tibet nowadays, even if you have these tight-knit villages or families that like a very close community, still people are disconnected because everyone nowadays is just busy on their phones. Everybody's just focused on their phones, checking their phones. And even if you actually are with people, people don't even talk to each other anymore. It was actually a film that some Tibetans made about it, about parents really being desperate, actually, because you see the children from sitting together, parents are cooking food as a family, but no one is speaking to each other, and the children are on their phones, and they're kind of laughing and talking to someone on their phone, but they're not talking to each other. No one is talking at home, even though they're together. Everyone is on their phone. And so even though people are together, the connection between family members is disappearing. So even though you have these communities and you have families living together, everyone is just looking at their phones all the time these days. And it looks like they're together, but really, even though they're side by side, there is really no connection. And it's almost like they are in a strange way of isolation.
我就当咱刚说这种别讲的是可怕的事，咱们可以恰恰的种三万的娘们啥子起的，你可些可怕的些的呢，要不去那么多，可是呢，但是如果这做些，如果先把这种通讯权动作的给讲了的话，嘛可怕的讲他的我想，讲的不大，你可是给些有嘛，我这个的娘的这种。
This is something really we have to pay attention to nowadays. So, for example, we have to make it a point that when we are sitting together with other people and we are having a meal together, we are eating together, and we shouldn't just look at our phone, because that's what people do. Even though they sit and eat together, they just look at their phone. That's really not good. So when we are in company with others and we're eating together and we're doing something together, then it's actually very disrespectful towards those companions that you're with if you're not paying any attention to them and you're just looking at your phone. So when we speak about this from busyness and so forth, there's no need even to think really far. It's actually in our homes. It's right next to us, actually.
但是我确定了，先他的目的对，是吧
？Even though the body is close, the mind is far away.
我现在咱都用吃饭机的，小米抽头发，那让这张吃饭仪式他这的话，我咱吃饭先切换这么新办这么多话，我咱都用新的手咱个手这把了切，没这把了当完，他这年没年他的切换节呀，这吃这那一说。我他这个提倡嘛，那家长可能多早，都用对吧？咱都用它吃吧，就这是咱都用吃吧，咱都用这吃吧的，从嘛就过了，咱个老上家里看不的，穷的长过来种出来，都用那偏北。我真的去呢，强米抽脱吧，是他强米让抽脱吧，这家长地方其他嘛说让抽脱吧，让这先抽脱吧去呢。我他都过来是抽脱吧去呢，真的说在你们俩提供，你们俩提供，我刚地球家头呀。先把咱家长这些这种可以放出去让嘛学的去呢，让他这就系统呢，再让这种去把这种可是的。
Now, next verse, number 5. You do yourself a favor by cutting the ties of sense pleasures and remaining stable in non-attachment. So cutting the bonds of sense pleasure. So the bonds here, that means that refers to the attachment that we have to the various sensations, sense pleasures, like seeing a beautiful form and liking that, or disliking something that's unpleasant, or liking to hear a pleasant sound and then rejecting an unpleasant sound and so forth, and the smell and so forth. So it's only some sense perceptions, and that that trigger our attachment or our aversion. And so you do yourself a favor when you give up the attachment and the aversion to them, and of course to just eliminate all of them it's just like that at once is of course difficult, but we have to start by reducing them and taking on some more self-control, making an effort in practice, and making an effort in not always falling under the power of attachment and aversion. So if you do that, you do yourself a
근데 다시今年我在这英国咱们确实先上坡了，都米吧，真的让这让去吧，你是在什么的那里可以那在家长等这一点嘞，没错，蛮家长有吧，我在这确实去，但确实也好的，确实穷人啊做这从那这好的，但确实米呢，我做先拿龙就开始用了，突破先那突破强的要慢，确实米呢，因为我咱们确实先上坡了，都米，但上坡也不在特别好的，但确实我在上坡别去我在特别好，多半200%程度，其他米那让这样去，这真的他在上坡特别好是说，这些呢也不的，你去那差不多，这咱们刚才看过，这在 top 那上爬位错这，上头在当下的这说别想改的要的，相当没什么钱。这里确实的从但说在做办公处使用的那过程当中的，或者说就提前做完提前做，这在可看很多的这个，那这就启动那这今年过的也是嘛，这几个人同伴对吧？全部同步在一起，那在做嘛做不起，做嘛做那这上面刚刚用过了哇，我听说的也是，这就是老年人多边人用天连载去趟着，现在基本是半片了就，始终多话，但多边人在这种阶段都用做才是，他做人要嘛的事，开始进了这采取哪意思？采取是正统呢？但什么讲就是采取正统的就开始的话，就是我们这样什么吧，挺难易的，是吧？样偏红的，他们忙的过的这么偏红的，是我听的。他说他在街上看到过的，他的生活基本嘛的，每年的那的 top 课上那提倡嘛的，甚至有的，他在说网上在起床的，等这个的，他妈说在希望在起在上呢，起嘛头在刚研究课的，这里他说，当网上这个咱们小学起多多点，是吧？嘛起来，我嘛的，说的，在让这张的起的掐着对吧？
Number 6, you do yourself a favor by being content with the bare necessities and not craving better things. So the bare necessities, so it's just to live a simple life, to, for example, have some simple food and clothing and so on, a place to live and so on. If you just have the simple things, the bare necessities, and you feel content, then you actually are wealthy. But if you never feel contentment, no matter how much you gain, the mind will never feel it has enough. You'll never feel satisfied. So it's hard to develop this kind of contentment, but it's essential. So sometimes when we always try to get what we want, and maybe when it is good that we get what we want, if we get what we want, but it can seem good for some time, but then it also brings along with it a lot of worry and effort in getting what you want to get, and all these worries about losing it and so on. If you just feel content and you just feel happy with whatever you have, then that is where you find your true wealth. In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says the desire to sense pleasures is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the more craving increases. So indulging in sense pleasures is just like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. And in the same way, there is no end to that desire for more possessions or pleasures. However much you indulge, it never brings you true satisfaction and only increases your longing for it, actually. And it's not just about things like food and clothing, it's also other possessions and immaterial things like fame and status and so forth. And if you just feel, as long as you feel that you need more of that, you will always be miserable. But when you feel that whatever I have, that's fine, it's enough, then your mind will become content. And by making an effort in contentment, you are doing yourself therefore a favor.
Very fine.
So
我听说在让往前了没块吧，也当点把去吧，但那让这张去吧，你是让往前了，让往前前第三呢，他就主要推快皮了，有么的意思？这他妈的那里东家的那他这种就主要推出门都希望来看这些都，然后那时候他拖起个子，老个话子，我做活呢，忙不晓得等于那年，我他推出门都做等于那年有这，让往前了学生的就这样快皮了有么的，没那里边的这些他们都听上了，而且轻松啊，这我而且运动没事。我没看了年蛮用事，我没看了年蛮用松多。我这里真的做把让他让去过的是让他让去吧，你把让自己吃过的也是。今天可以了，他就当面人事情的种了，就当面是对，他就当会有嘛的，他做做人事情的，你们那都是这个的。就专门那里边产品就斯托不讲吧，产品就是斯托不讲吧，产品斯托那家里给的是，讲吧产品修，产品修了昨天。Stopna jargeres jarka ranongeres jarka stop jar tambe chus jarwa tambe chulan donken mi tambe chul donken shira yo mare sondo malare beke tambe chulan donken mi nobe de la laptop chi da nobe de la laptop jagare sta 我从多我真的我他最近我都挺差这对但是挺对的这几天了社交界长毛本土些他那地多长毛本土啊
那属于的，
长毛本土
嘛本土，
长毛本土是他小的，但是没别的，就是没那个嘛，实际查的时候，他我对是没别的，当俺用过，这对就是没那罗查的，有嘛的，他查的时候送错用的，起码他长毛本土他有把哈过哇，这是没别的，他两个下，是没别的，他就是呢，啷个用的法律罗查，法律罗查是真多，法律罗查是你嘛罗查是多，我这是提出法律罗查哇，是噻。
啊，巴罗罗说，
法律罗查是，我的就有忙不着去学啥那么个是。就不就往那么忙不做么子，这些多，但是我别的啥呢？你明白这，或者说是查了起啊，这可能出来就不红下来，上多，这里没来的别个对送多下，他就当或者说是查了起呢，要我们说，可能出来就不红下来，然后晓得，你咱像或者说是查了就起那最多，OK。这没来的对，咱今天出去多，没或者罗查说，真的你去头个的是。今天出去的是拉倒，真的，这是我别的，他前两天的多的，你和冲巴子说的是前两高温多少？我这是真的地汤的温度，那实际这地汤前两这呢，你也达不到都是。
啊，
实际这个地汤你也可以俺用俺做用可能都大个哇，这个哇。这你来下都，现在实际可以了，就说你干嘛话，看到我去干嘛话啊？我那这他点都是。他前两天那地当下我都是，就出门的，咱那点都没都是俺你不拉全部都这多，咱那地那全部都拉全部这，咱没拉的别，咱那今天出去就抓嘛抓嘛拉全部这，生活别的咱，他就俺让你不然今天出去就要嘛的是，俺让你不然，就让看了那嘛了，俺让你不今天出去中国都要嘛的是，俺都牛拉全部，俺他就让多些的。蒙着嘛，都他没来这边，咱来清楚是吧？我大看年学嘛，怎么看嘛年的，真多是。我这个现在他让这张去吧，让我写了嘛，给让这张去，他是这个啥
Then number 7, you do yourself a favor by keeping a steadfast, letting yourself fall under the control of others. So you, when you do not hand your freedom to others, but you stay firm in your commitment, like to literally it says to the resolve, like to the yidam, then it is to be truly kind to yourself. Because if you give your power to others, then you lose the momentum or the strength of your Dharma practice. For example, in Tibet, there's always a lot of work to do at home, and parents and relatives tell you you should work, you should do something, you should do this or that. And then in the end, there is never any time left for Dharma practice. And so therefore, the Dharma, for, like there's this saying that the Dharma has no owner. it belongs to whoever has the greatest perseverance. There is no like ownership in the Dharma. So Milarepa also once said, when somebody said that he encountered many obstacles, and he said, actually, I've never encountered any obstacles, and that was because I simply have never listened to anyone. So he did not allow anyone to control him. So this verse teaches us to practice the Dharma with some self-determination, without allowing ownership, and not allowing others to own you. And so then another story about Milarepa is that first Milarepa said that those who gain things, they think they have found a victory, but they have no desire to practice the Dharma. They want victory, but they have no desire to practice the Dharma. And they don't want loss, but they are craving for non-virtuous actions. They're always engaging in non-virtuous actions. And that is the actual defeat. There's another story about Milarepa. I mean, he stayed in Drangma Bondum. And so he had to actually just arrived there because before he was staying in Takataso, and then he had left. But his sister Beta, she thought that he was still staying in Takataso. So she first went there looking for him, but he was no longer there. And then she learned that he was now in
Mortgage,
Taka.
mortgage,这些持续用户是不多，mortgage 这些持续用户是长毛帮头是他修给了哈过是吧？
So she asked around, no, she asked a lot of people where Milarepa was, and then finally she learned that he is in Dharma Bonzo. So then she went there to meet Milarepa.
我啷个用的我的都查得清多，
이는 다보 So on the road, on the way there, while she was going there, she saw Bari Lotsawa, who was a monk teacher at Lama. He was giving Dharma teachings and empowerments to a lot of people. And there were a lot of people around him, and it was quite a. There were monks like playing like the horn, the instruments. So it was quite a spectacle for her to witness so many people, and just very kind of fancy Dharma event. And then, so then she thought that that would be a good thing to do for my brother. He should become a monk just like him. And if he could do that and be a monk and teach just like him, then he would be much better off. He would do much better than he's doing now. So I have to go and tell him that. And so then when she found Milarepa, then she told him that, so if you should be like Bari Lotsawa, and you could do even better if you were to become a monk and teach Dharma to others. You could have such a good, fulfilling life. And then Milarepa replied, if I wanted to do that, I could do that, and I could do much better than he does in that. But I don't want to do that because it is the 8 worldly concerns. Being among all these people and being controlled by all these people is all the 8 worldly concerns, and I have no wish for that. And which is why I'm always moving around. If I stay in one place, I know people will find me. So I keep moving so they won't find me. So I won't stay here either. I will go to Lapchi, and you should come too. Let's go to Lapchi. And then his sister Beta said that I'm not going to Lapchi. We have no 8 worldly concerns anyways. So I'm not going to Lapchi. But Milarepa then said, and I will go alone. So then he left. Okay. She said that if you want more misery and suffering, then you go to Lapchi, but I'm not going to expose myself to more misery. And so then Milarepa said, so be it. And he did not listen, and he left. And this is how he did himself. Milarepa did himself a true favor.
drop tom nan sam kan ge ta ma sen di na kan ge ti si chom na jian gen ba zo lam chi che to bia jian gen ba zo ta zai yung du ko ta ne ru ko be chu ni in sam so so de dong a zi chung dang to ya ta ru chi tom na de rang ji rang ki che ba yin se wo zi ru na shu sa le ta zai pa zo kan na wo ta zai yang ta chi na zang zo wo zang ko be de ba de ma cha na ba chi ne ta ba tam chi chi be kong bang to bia wo zi ru to ra ta de ba drop tom na de ne rang ji rang chi ba yin zong ko sa.
Then verse number 8, you do yourself a favor by pursuing the lasting happiness, enlightenment without regard for the temporary pleasures of this life. And so the happiness of this life is only temporary, so it is impermanent. Because it is impermanent, it is unreliable. It changes constantly. Sometimes things are good, and then again they're bad. But it always it is unreliable. And so instead of depending on that, one should aim for the lasting happiness of enlightenment and make an effort toward that, toward the permanent, lasting happiness of Buddhahood, even if that entails some hardship. Through persevering through these hardships, one learns how to take unfavorable conditions onto the path, as the path. And by doing so, one is doing oneself a favor. And therefore, so the way you do yourself a favor is by not being attached to the small pleasures of samsara, but instead striving for complete liberation, for enlightenment.
我他我国外听啥的，我不我演帮呢，帮帮你了，2、3年帮那让这让去吧，因为我不我演，这是帮过来，但我不我演先价开始去呢，我说东2是切给的，我但我不我演做这意思，但就当在先价从嘛帮我刚来看不有的，所以那这是穷当，现在穷当呢，当呢在东帮你是，但先给那路子，往那吧2、3年过来是东帮你，2年去从呢，这让这让去吧，你总票啥的吧。
Number 9, you do yourself a favor by abandoning the clinging to phenomena as being real and bringing emptiness into your experience. So I'm clinging to things, not clinging to phenomena as being real, is not as the stronger our fixation, our attachment to or these phenomena, those things in our lives, the stronger our fixation is, the more suffering we will experience. And of course, the verse tells us to let go of that, but it's difficult to let go of all attachments completely at once. But at least we start by reducing them as much as we can. And so instead, as we reduce our attachment, we focus more of our attention to practicing the meaning of emptiness, meditating on the meaning of emptiness. And by doing that, we are doing ourselves a favor.
他做我这样子的，他这几趟去那我当初有了，看了看一那这俺做电把线的逻辑有了，我这他们去他这趟接完没吧？还是接完，就他们去接完没吧？没吧没吧，俺把没吧？我他今个那什么的，他们去车的东半夜是哪去啥的？这人的东半夜在这上的，他娘们去去那在让这让去吧，人送出啥的？
So mainly, anyone really is grasping at things, at phenomena as truly existing. So whatever we perceive, we take everything as a reality, as real. But in truth, all phenomena are unborn, they are unabiding, and they are unceasing. So that's the meaning of emptiness. And by habituating to that, you do yourself a favor.
전에 다 진족들하고 고som 탐내 매도가 손이 손도 조반 비반에 나간디랑 치바이 시다 고som 세나 룽아 이송 답쇼래 룽아 이송 타마도 좀 레스 제 루이나 다제 차세야 고종치야 창세 고종라 소치야 전에 게 와서야 너 하이나 제 가동 개조의 컨트롤치야 샘 되제 샘 나제 다제 참니제 창조 샘라 소동 많이 나서다 그래나 비내로 강념내 치수도 지네 뇽모바 차방 송往去嘛送完 前呢，我在国上他妈都把什么都把中医咋中医现在他说那么说一些说了，他说那么说一些说，他说那么说的，他在帕罗尔金把抽了，说把你们那其他人往这说那么说的，他一些说现在在那种我你看看，叫在新波了说过面子说一些说你说给我在这里对这他说你从头就把明白，是吧？的从你从头就明白，这让这让700年。我别讲了，想那大家都给我看中了，给我看的那题，大家当就了，可上面没我话写了，个可上面没我话写，那他题讲了，啊这是我也是就了，这没别，我话去过学了，这样的这说了这看的那一些说下弄偏学啥吧，他们说那么说啥给我的看懂了，挺久了，这我话这说没我话去送那的那现在一些说要说你送就吧。比把真的让这张切吧意思，我这咋让这张切的出去了是的。
Then verse number 10. You do yourself a favor by unifying the two accumulations without leaving your three doors in the ordinary state. So the three doors of body, speech, and mind should not remain in an ordinary state, but should be engaged in the accumulation of merit and wisdom. So engaging body, speech, and mind means, for example, with the body, one can perform prostrations, and with the speech, one can recite prayers, various recitations, and with the mind, one can take the bodhisattva vow and so forth. And then there is no thought of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And then when one is then not controlled by attachment, aversion, and ignorance, one accumulates merit and wisdom. And so merit, for example, is accumulated by practicing the 6 paramitas. And wisdom comes from practicing meditating on emptiness or Mahamudra. So by cultivating this union of merit and wisdom, the two accumulations, you're doing yourself a favor. And so how we practice them in union practically, for example, whatever virtue you practice, whatever dharma you practice, you do your dharma practice, and then in the end, we always conclude our session with a dedication. And so the dedication of wisdom is the dedication that is free from the concepts of the 3 spheres. So, and then in this way, we are also sealing our conceptual merit, whatever virtue we have practiced, with the non-conceptual accumulation of wisdom. So whatever practice you do, if you recite a prayer and so on, in the end, you dedicate with this understanding of emptiness, and therefore you're also accumulating wisdom. And by uniting merit and wisdom, of practicing the union of merit and wisdom, you're doing yourself a favor. So these are the 10 ways to do yourself a favor.
我真的到底这里给先引几点状况。
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind, root, and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yadams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, heroes, and heroines, yogini and assembly of dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please heed me. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all sentient beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise within my mind. May thoughts of fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. Even at death, may the torment of suffering not arise. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and in the pervasive clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
번 그냥 다 나가나요?
How are you?
그럼 어떠니 가들 검나더니 그냥 이 대화 뭐 방송.
저 뭐 개침 뭐 누에?
다 공디 좀 냠랭 골라라. 그 대자 바제 가시 요새 망저가 조리.
나양.
대 검나 나서 그냥.
다제 지난 가서 참 초사등했다고 말해. 직사로.
야.
야양 한 대인 저시들 선장나 야 good night. Okay, good night everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drupon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Inala.
Yeah, good to see you.